Welcome to 365 Language Planet. This is Let's Speak English and Nihongo in collaboration with the RSU PAL Center of Ransit University International College in Bangkok, Thailand. Before we start, let's look at this month's 365 language moons and planets. So far this month, we have 4 moons, Zayar Mint, Nora, Aya Miatida, and A Highbridge. Way to go! And 6 planets, Takesh, Y.O., Yiminfo, K.E., K-Workshop, and Kan Mama. Nice job. If you want to become a 365 language planet, all you need to do is share an idea in the chat. So, let's begin! 始めましょう. So, the theme of Let's Speak English and Nihongo, episode 45, is test. In Japanese, testo. And to talk with us about this theme is PK. Good evening, PK.
Good evening, everyone.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, except from the little pressure of the final exams.
Yes, which is another word for test. So, do you take a lot of tests?
Yeah, as a university, we have a lot of mock tests, which are tests before the actual tests.
Yes. So, are you excited to talk about tests?
Yes. Really.
Yes. It's probably a very important topic in your life, I imagine. Yes. All right. So let's begin. So the first question of tonight's show is, what advice would you give someone who is going to take a really important test? 日本語で本当に重要なテストを受ける人にどんなアドバイスをしますか? So, PPK, what do you think? What advice would you give someone who is going to take a really important test?
I would say preparation is the key. So you really want to prepare for the test, not just the day before the test. You really want to prepare like months in advance depending on the test, of course. Yes.
Yeah, I think that sounds like some very smart, not the easiest advice in the world to follow, but some very good advice, I think. Well, let's ask the viewers. What advice would you give someone who is going to take a really important test? 本当に重要なテストを受ける人にどんなアドバイスをしますか? Please write your answer in the chat or in the comments. チャットまたはコメントに答えを書いてください. You have 4 minutes. All right. If you have some advice, please let us know. And I'm sure like in every country, tests are very, people take lots of tests, I imagine. So.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Nora has some advice. Nora says, I would give someone not to be very nervous or scared. Nice advice. Mia Swa says, I don't like tests. Not many people do. Okay. K-Workshop says, take it easy. You can do it. Nice advice. your PPK, your advice was like, before the test, much, long before the test to prepare well. But, what about like, the night before the test or test day?
Well, in that case, you really want to cram as much information as you possibly can. So the best you can do is just focus on the most important parts and get the general idea, because you are not going to remember every single detail.
Got some interesting advice from Ayami Atira. Says more sleep before the test. Thank you very much. And I haven't been clapping, but thank you very much. Ayami Atira, K Workshop, Mia, and Nora. Thank you guys so much for joining tonight's show. And Kanmama, too. All right. Nora says, we all get nervous when we take a test. That's true. But, there's two types of nervous, two types of nervous energy. One is like scared nervous, and the other is excited nervous. And so I always try to be excited. Is that you too?
Well, for some people, to be excited for exams might be a little tough.
Yeah, but I always think, it's like, why, it's kind of like if you study a language, I always ask people, why do you study a language? Like, most of the time, like people, my image is, we study languages because we want to use languages. And, it's like, you want to, learn knowledge so you can use knowledge. And,
Yeah. So for me, I just see exams as stepping stones towards success or better future. So, I mean, we can still fail, but we can see the failure as a learning step. So I'm not exactly afraid as before of exams.
That's great. I was just laughing because Nora said, I don't like taking tests. She put a thumb down. Very funny. But yeah, it's kind of, you study, you study to take a test. It's like kind of the same as like sports. Like you practice to play a game. Usually. Right. All right. Kan Mama says, you should eat some sweets before the test. Your head may be clearly. Interesting advice. Thank you, Kan Mama, for joining tonight's show. Yeah, it's food. For me, I'm a big coffee drinker, and so I would, nowadays, if I was a student and I was taking a test, I would do some kind of like a meditation, and then I would drink some coffee, then I would take the test.
I've seen some of my friends eating gums during the test because they pulled an all-nighter just before the test. So they need to stay awake by chewing gum.
Well, you do what you have to do. Okay, well, great advice. Great advice, viewers. Let's move on to the next section. So now you can write a new question in the chat or in the comments. チャットまたはコメントに新しい質問を書いてください. You have 4 minutes. As always, you can ask a question about tests, or you can ask questions about anything you want. Yes, so any kind of question is okay. And when I was a student in America in high school, the big test was the SAT test. And it's a very important test for entering university. Was there a big test like that in Myanmar?
Yes, at about 10th grade, that is before the new change. Now the final test to graduate high school is at 12th grade.
Wow.
So not a lot of students are happy with it because it's two years more.
Wow. I see. Well, Nora has a question. She says, PK, do you get nervous when you take a test? Nice question.
I think we can't exactly control nervousness exactly because it's part of our physiological process, but we can do some things to like reduce it, like stretching or doing a little exercise before the test.
Tita says, do you have many? Instead of, no, stress is a non-countable noun. So I would say, do you have a lot? Like, do you have a lot of stress before the test? I'm sure it's kind of case by case. Is that, case by case? I mean, some tests maybe you have a lot of stress before the test, and some tests not so much.
For me, if I'm thoroughly prepared for a test, I'm not as nervous as the test I don't get to thoroughly prepare for.
I see. So the more prepared you are, the less stress you have. Right, PBK?
Yeah.
Yes. It makes sense, That's it seemed like it's just like a basketball game or a soccer game. If you prepare really well for the game, you have less stress than if you didn't practice at all. And it's like, oh, now we have to play this really good team. We didn't practice or prepare. You might have a lot of stress. You might have more stress. Interesting. Okay. K Workshop says, one of my classmates often takes difficult tests. I wonder if, I would add, if I should take some kind of test. Nice question. We will talk about that more, K Workshop. So that's a good question. We'll talk about that more in the show. Nora says, when my test begins, I don't want the time to run out, so I make some mistakes. I see. Kind of rush. Sometimes people rush to answer all the questions. And then, another big, in America, like my teachers, was a big one. Test strategy was to, skip. If a question is really difficult, you could skip it and just try to finish the easy questions first, and then after that, go back to the difficult ones and try to finish them. Do you use a similar approach?
Yeah, I use many approaches. This is one of the approaches. Another approach is I focus on the ones with the most marks. So even if I don't finish the test in time, the ones with most marks are finished, so I get as many marks as I can.
Nice idea. Takesh, thank you for joining tonight's show. Takesh says, what advice would you give someone who can't sleep well the night before a test because they are nervous?
Well, I would say focus on breathing. Essentially do meditation if you're asleep. Another way is to keep your eyes open. So your eyes will get tired eventually, and before you know it, you will fall asleep.
Wow, I've never tried that. That's something new for me to try. I go kind of the meditation way, and even if I can't sleep, I just try to close my eyes and just try to focus on my breathing. Try not to think too much, and just try to rest well. Um, for me, I think resting well is better than not sleeping and not resting.
Yeah, sometimes if you focus on falling asleep too much, you will not fall asleep.
Good point. Good advice. Okay, well, let's move on to the next section of tonight's show. It's kind of related to K Workshop's question. Do you think taking a test is good motivation for learning a language? 日本語でテストを受けることは言語を学ぶいい動機になると思いますか? So, PPK, what do you think? Do you think taking a test is good motivation for learning a language?
Yeah, of course. When I was learning English, I took a lot of different variety of tests, like speaking tests, listening tests, writing tests, and because of these tests, I sit here today being able to speak this fluently.
I see. So you credit taking tests a lot for your improvement.
Yes.
I see. Well, that's a good sales point for a test. That's great. All right. Well, let's ask the viewers. Do you think taking a test is good motivation for learning a language? テストを受けることは言語を学ぶいい動機になると思いますか? Please write your answer in the chat or in the comments. チャットまたはコメントに答えを書いてください. We already have some answers. Noda says, yeah, but I don't like taking tests. All right. Very honest. Nice honesty, Noda. Mia says, yes, I think. Thank you. So far we got 3 people. PPK, Noda, and Mia all were saying yes. How about you? How about the other viewers? Please write your answer in the chat or in the comments. チャットまたはコメントに答えを書いてください. All right, Takanona, thank you for joining tonight's show. Takanona says, when I study for a test, I understand the content the most. I think it's kind of like your deep study, PPK, before the test. You study really hard to
yes.
Deeply understand. Okay.
Yeah, understanding.
Go ahead.
Yeah, of course.
Well, Takesh says, for me, that's not motivation because I hate tests. Oh, no. Okay. What were you saying, PPK?
Yeah, I was just saying not many people like to take tests because some might say they are not very effective. Some might say they're just not very good for measuring IQ or whatever.
Well, I think one of the difficult things about learning languages is continuing. Like continuing to study. It's not easy for a lot of people to continue. And so when you have a test coming up, either it's 1 month, 2 months, or 1 year from now, I think it kind of helps you continue to study towards the test. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I think it serves as a pressure because tests are, in my opinion, dependent on our our future is dependent on the tests. So
Nice pressure to study.
yeah.
All right. Noda says, I need to study a lot. That's why I don't like taking tests. Oh, sorry to hear that. A Hybrid says, I think it's a good opportunity. And K Workshop says, I agree 100% with Takesh. And Takesh was the one who said he hates taking tests. Yes. Yeah. For me, I don't hate taking tests. But it's always so it's test. I believe tests can be very useful to keep your motivation going, as can like a race. Like if you sign up for a marathon race, that'll give you some motivation to practice running before the race.
Yes, for me, just before the final exam, I see the mini tests as tests of my knowledge. So if I make mistakes, I can still improve. So I can do better in the final exam.
Okay, great. All right, let's move on to the next section. So now, please write a new question in the chat or in the comments. チャットまたはコメントに新しい質問を書いてください。You have 4 minutes. 4分間あります。If you want to, you can make a question about test, or you can make a question about anything. I always, for me, I feel like, I'm kind of a little bit of a nut, or you could say crazy about energy, but I feel like, it's kind of like playing a basketball game. If you play a basketball game and you come to the game super tired, like you're already super tired, and then it's like, okay, game time, let's play. Not a recipe for success.
So that's why taking care of yourself is very important. So you can take tests better.
Yes, I think so. All right. Mia says test is good for maybe the mind. I guess the mind. Tests are good for the mind. Maybe, is that correct, Mia? And if you want to change that into a question, I would just say, do you think tests are good for the mind? Or I think tests are good for the mind. How about you? PPK, do you think tests are good for the mind?
Yes, of course, because it trains our brain to get used to studying and taking in information. So our brain's memory improve. So as it improves, we are able to retain information more, better and better.
I see. Actually, Nora corrected me. She said, no, she means many students. Tests are good for many students. I don't know. Some students might say yes, and some students might say no. What do you think, PPK?
Well, I think it depends on the person and the type of exam they're dealing with. So I think overall tests are beneficial because they serve as a pressure for you to study. So you get a habit of working hard. So you are actually being prepared for the life of adults.
Yeah, and dealing with stress is a big part of life, and so it's definitely tests are a good practice. And if you struggle with taking tests, it's you have a lot of room to improve. Okay, K Workshop says, I want to have an opportunity to talk with a foreigner who doesn't speak Japanese instead of taking a test. How about you? Nice. Yeah, I think when you talk to someone who doesn't know your native language, it's more of a challenge.
Yeah, I also think it's good because it forces you to make use of everything you have learned to speak in their language. So it's better if they can correct you. So you will actually improve a lot.
Yes, I agree. Miyatita says, how do you prepare for a test?
Well, for me, for the final exam, I just start studying really, really hard from the beginning of the semester. So when the actual exam comes, I can take it easy because I've studied everything.
I see. Sounds great. Yeah, I haven't studied for a test for a long time, but generally speaking, reviewing your notes is always very helpful. Like in university, I started taking a lot more notes in my classes, and then reviewing the notes, and then reviewing the textbook. And sometimes, try to, compare my notes and compare the textbook. That's kind of a good way, kind of interesting to see. Okay, great questions. All right, well, let's move on to the last question of tonight's show, which is, I prefer to test my language skills by talking to people rather than taking tests. How about you? 日本語で、私はテストを受けるよりも人と話すことで語学力を試す方が好きです。あなたはどうですか? It's kind of like K Workshop's idea a little bit. But PPK, how about you? Do you prefer to test your language skills by talking to people or taking tests?
Well, I can't exactly say which is better, but I think being able to do both is the best because receiving a formal education can really, really be beneficial for your, academics, and also having a close circle of friends you can talk to in the language you're learning is also very beneficial because they are people you can speak with, and not a lot of people have these kind of people.
I see. Well, let's ask the viewers. Do you prefer to test your language skills by talking to people or taking tests? Let us know in the chat. 私はテストを受けるよりも人と話すことで語学力を試す方が好きです。あなたはどうですか? All right. Nora says, me too. I guess languages are more fun. That's nice. All right. Well, please write your answer in the chat or in the comments if you haven't already. チャットまたはコメントに答えを書いてください. You have 4 minutes. 4分間あります. Okay, so yeah, this one's a little, this is tough because, it's kind of like sometimes an introvert versus extrovert a little bit. Because, I think, sometimes introvert, it's a little, talking to people is sometimes a little bit, more stressful than just like taking a paper test. Especially if, maybe if it's someone you don't know. It's like the first time talking to someone. It might be more stressful than just taking a paper test. But whereas, extrovert is like, it's so much more fun talking to people than taking a test. So it's maybe a little bit personality based. What do you think, PPK?
Well, for me, I would say more people would find it more fun to take tests. I don't know, talk to people rather than take tests because tests are a bit more serious. So talking to people may not take as much energy as taking tests.
Yeah, and test. The big thing about test is like focus. Kind of quiet and a very strong focus on the task at hand. Whereas conversation is a little bit more kind of. Sometimes it's based on memory, but also creativity too. Based on what kind of question or sentence someone says to you, and then you need to respond. And enjoy the conversation. It is interesting, but how about the viewers? Let us know. Do you prefer to test your language skills by talking to people or taking tests? Let us know in the chat or in the comments.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
It depends on what you're trying to do, because if you want to get a job in another country, I think a test is more appropriate than just talking to people because it's a formal education. Or if you just want to visit some country and talk to people, then just making friends and talk to them, it might be enough.
That's very true. And I think that's one of the reasons why, there's more, especially in Japan, there's a very strong focus on taking tests because of, for jobs, either jobs in Japan or jobs outside Japan. And so there's a very, I think quite a strong focus on taking tests. And so, I think sometimes people focus a little too much on taking tests and not enough on actually using the language to communicate with people.
Yes.
So, but it's I think as you said, it's best if you can do both.
Yeah, in my country, everyone's taking English tests because English opens a lot of doors and opportunities, so they can go work in other countries and hopefully have a better life.
See, Takesh says, I'm afraid of that too, since I can't speak English well. But I think you can speak English well enough to try. And so I was, it's kind of, I know you don't like taking tests, but it's don't worry. Sometimes I talk to people who are taking tests, and they're saying I'm nervous. I always just say, just relax, and let's try to enjoy this moment. Okay, well let's move on to the last section of tonight's show. So now you can write a new question in the chat or in the comments. チャットまたはコメントに新しい質問を書いてください。 You have 4 minutes. Okay, so K Workshop says, I don't feel the need to take tests to measure my skills. That's nice. And Takanona says, I prefer to talk to people, but I need to take a test to prove my language ability. And that's kind of the similar thing about like the job. You know, like to get a job or to get opportunities outside your country, you need to take tests to kind of show your language skill. Yes. So yeah, sometimes
it's all about what you're trying to do.
Yes. Yes, indeed. All right. Well, if you have a new question, please write it in the chat or in the comments. 正しい質問があったら、ぜひチャットまたはコメントに書いてください。Could be about test or it could be about anything. This year I went to Osaka. I'm sure have you heard of Osaka, PPK?
Yeah,
Yes.
I've heard of major. Is this city?
Yes. Yes, very, very like kind of like the second like biggest city in Japan, and it's very lot of people from around the world kind of coming to Osaka to visit and do sightseeing, business. So I feel like for people who love learning languages, Osaka was kind of like a paradise. You know, so many people from different countries, and so it was really fun chance to try to test one's language abilities, I guess you could say.
I see. I'll love to come some days so I can practice my Japanese.
Yeah, yes, Osaka is fantastic. It's it's quite near Kyoto as well, and so I think that's why it's really popular major city, because it's near Kyoto and near Nara. So it has a nice location for sightseeing. It's not that far from Tokyo as well. All right. Well, if you have a new question, please write it in the chat or in the comments. Could be about tests or it could be about anything. Okay, K Workshop says, what is the difference between a test and an exam? Nice question. Any idea, PPK?
To be honest, I don't know. I use the terms very interchangeably. Do you know?
Yeah, I would say, there's not a big difference, other than sometimes, exams are very, I would say, school-centric. Like school-centric, I mean like high school and university oftentimes use the word exam. Whereas test, what was it?
I think exams are more serious.
Yeah. Yes. And
I think we use the term test for like some small. The test can be small.
yes.
It can be mock tests.
Yes. It's kind of more of a general term, test. But yeah, exam. I think exam. I just use exam. For my experience, like mostly in university, we use exams, but I think maybe high school too. And yeah. So test is a little bit more general term. Exam, like you could say I have an exam or I have a test, and it could be it's the same thing. So not a big difference. Not a big difference. Okay, YO says YO's joined the show. Good evening, YO. YO says, hi everyone. I prefer to enjoy learning English and Korean. I guess that means she doesn't like taking tests. Perhaps. But it's case by case. I think some people might enjoy taking tests. And other people don't. And so so I'm happy you enjoy learning English and Korean. Okay, well, that's the end of tonight's show. Thank you guys so much for studying with us. Thank you, PPK, for joining the show. The Let's Speak English and Nihongo podcast is every Sunday at 8:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time. So, if you haven't already, please subscribe and give the show a big thumbs up. Your support is much appreciated. Hope everyone has a great night. Anything you want to say, PPK?
Bye, everyone. It was nice talking about exams with you guys.
Yes, it was. It was. All right. We'll see you next time. また近いうちに会いましょう。Bye.